Welcome back to the Midnight Writers Club, where sleepless creatives, horror lovers, and storytelling fanatics gather under the glow of the midnight oil. Whether you're up late writing, reading, or just looking for a reason to embrace the eerie hours, you've come to the right place. I'm your host, Medusa, and tonight we're stepping into a different kind of nightmare. One that doesn't rely on grotesque transformations or supernatural terror, but rather the horror that takes root in our own minds. That's right. Tonight we're talking about psychological horror. The kind of fear that lingers long after the last page is turned or the credits roll. This is the horror of paranoia, of guilt, of reality slipping through our fingers. And tonight, we're going to unravel the mechanics behind what makes psychological horror so effective, how it differs from other subgenres, and why it stays with us long after the scare is over. Psychological horror is all about perception. It doesn't rely on external monsters. It makes you the monster, or the victim, or sometimes both. The fear doesn't come from what's lurking outside, but from what's lurking within. Some of the best examples of this subgenre force us to question everything. Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House leaves us wondering if Eleanor is truly experiencing supernatural forces, or if it's all in her mind. Psycho takes us inside the fractured reality of Norman Bates, blurring the lines between identity and madness. And books like American Psycho make us question the very fabric of what's real and what's delusion. Even films like The Babadook, Black Swan, and Jacob Ladder play with unreliable perspectives, twisting reality until the horror isn't just about what's happening. It's about not knowing what's happening at all. So why does psychological horror get under our skin in ways other horror subgenres don't? 1. The fear of losing reality. One of the most terrifying things about psychological horror is the idea that we can't trust our own senses. What happens when your mind betrays you? When your memories, your perceptions, your entire reality might be a lie? 2. Isolation and paranoia. Psychological horror often preys on loneliness. Protagonists are usually isolated, either physically or mentally. They're cut off from the world, sometimes by others, sometimes by their own minds. And that creeping paranoia, it makes us as readers or viewers just as unsettled as they are. 3. The horror of guilt and trauma. Unlike other horror subgenres, psychological horror often stems from something deeply personal. Past trauma, guilt, or unresolved fears. The scariest monsters aren't external. They're the ones we carry with us. Before we continue, I want to take a moment to talk about something close to my heart. My book, Feeding Lucy. It's a horror story that blends Polish folklore with Scandinavian traditions, particularly the Sancta Lucia celebration, and explores themes of grief, tradition, and darkness. At its core, it's a story about a woman returning home after her mother's death, only to realize that home is not the place she remembers. It's about the weight of family legacy, about love that consumes, and about the terrifying realization that sometimes we are not in control of our own fates. Feeding Lucy has body horror, folklore, lesbian representation, and yes, plenty of unsettling psychological horror woven in. I'll be sharing more about my writing journey in future episodes, but for now, let's get back to tonight's topic. You know what time it is. It's time for your midnight writing challenge. Tonight's prompt: write a story where your protagonist slowly begins to doubt their own reality. Maybe they're seeing messages no one else can see. Maybe their reflection is moving on its own. Maybe a loved one swears an entire memory never happened. The catch? They can never get proof. Only their own growing paranoia. And as always, if you write something based on this prompt, tag me or send it my way. I'd love to see how deep into the mind's abyss you're willing to go. Well, that's it for tonight's episode of Midnight Writers Club. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe, follow, or leave a message for the demons in your mind. Next time, we're shifting from the mind to something a little more otherworldly. We're talking folk horror. The kind of terror rooted in forgotten rituals, eerie traditions, and the fear of what lurks just beyond the safety of civilization. Until then, keep the lights low, the words flowing, and remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones we write ourselves.